You need a sovereign relationship with AI. And I want to talk about the AI overwhelm that every high level entrepreneur I know is dealing with right now. And I know that because just this month, I've talked to dozens of 7 and 8 figure founders who are feeling extremely overclocked. And honestly, I've been in the exact same boat, working 60-hour weeks, building my own AI platform as a non technical person without a team. So the overwhelm isn't just real, it's accelerating and it's moving really fast. So the number of tools that are coming onto the scene, the speed of releases and updates, the YouTube videos at 4 a.m. about the thing that just dropped that's going to change literally everything. It's a lot, and you're probably feeling it and you're feeling the pressure. There's this nagging sense that I'm feeling all the time that if I'm not keeping up, then I'm falling behind, that someone else is going to, use this tool, this technology to eat your lunch. That's one of the things that a lot of the founders that I've been talking to are feeling, that unless they're implementing more, learning more, adapting faster, using AI better than other people, then someone in their industry is going to take them out of business. So everyone's trying to do their best. Everyone's watching all the tutorials, experimenting with all the tools, trying to stay current. But somewhere in the middle of all of that, what I'm finding is true for a lot of founders is that the actual business, the core business that, makes you money and delivers value, that's getting less and less of you. The thing you built, the clients you serve, the team you might have, the work that actually generates the revenue, the expression, the content, the connections, the things that make the thing work in the first place, that stuff is getting the leftover version of you, not your best. And I've been there. This past, say, like month and a half has been quite wild. And what I want to offer you today is, I think, something that is going to help you develop a much more intentional, much more useful relationship with AI, because this is much more profound than a specific AI tool or strategy or framework for implementing AI. What I want to give you is actually a rubric, a compass, a way to make every AI decision from a place of clarity instead of anxiety. Because the problem that most people have with AI right now isn't that they're using it wrong or they're not doing enough. It's actually that they don't have a clearly defined relationship with it. And that distinction between a defined relationship and an undefined one, that's where all the juice is. So by the end of this, you're going to have a complete framework as to how to relate to AI as a sovereign entrepreneur. I'll explain what the fuck that means. And this is a contrast to someone who's either running from it because you have your head in the sand and it's too much, it's overwhelming, or someone who's so consumed by it that you just are having a hard time regulating yourself. You're having a hard time compartmentalizing your focus and your attention. And look, I don't want you to be on either end of the spectrum because both are pretty deadly, especially with what's happening. I want you to be someone who uses it with precision, intentionality, and without losing their mind or their focus in the process. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. Let's get into it. So this is the foundational reframe that I want to give you, which is AI is not a tool in the ordinary sense of the word. A hammer is a tool. You pick it up, you use it, you put it down. It has no effect on you when it's not in your hand. I don't think there's any founder who's waking up at 2 a.m., having dreams about how to integrate a hammer more into their business and their life. AI is different, right? AI is what I call a geometry, an energetic structure. And whether you've defined a relationship with it or not, you are in a relationship with it. The moment that it entered your awareness, the moment that it started shaping what you think is possible or necessary or urgent, you were in a relationship with it. And the question is just whether that relationship that you're in is conscious or unconscious. And this matters enormously because in an unconscious relationship with something, you don't get to decide the terms of that relationship. The thing has power over you. Your state becomes a function of it, which is exactly what's happening to most entrepreneurs right now. It's probably happening to you as well. Think of your phone, think of Instagram, think of TV, Netflix. Think of those vapes that were on the scene for a while. I don't know where they went, but everyone was in a really interesting relationship with the vapes, right? People don't actually realize that those are energetic structures that they are in a relationship with. And when that relationship is unconscious, basically when you've never paused and asked, what is this thing? How do I want to relate to it? What are the terms of this agreement? Why am I using it? What are my boundaries? What are my needs? You end up becoming a slave to it rather than using it as a tool. By the way, this is a huge rabbit hole. We can go on. I'll talk more about it if you like. The same thing applies to money. The same thing applies to the people in your life. The same thing applies to your business, on its own. So your state basically is the reflection of the waves that you're riding with this thing. So, with your phone, you can imagine like a new notification pops up and suddenly it takes your attention and you're distracted. There's a new AI announcement and you instantly feel anxious because you're like, fuck, there's so much stuff I need to, I personally, I have a YouTube playlist with maybe 150 videos that I've bookmarked that I haven't even watched. And just looking at that, and maybe you even saw the screenshot of my screen, I have, 50 tabs open. I'm very, very, very ADHD. So regardless of where you are on the spectrum, this is pretty anxiety inducing. There's a ton of posts, videos about the tool that's going to change everything, and suddenly you're down, a really deep rabbit hole, wondering if your entire business, everything you built, is about to become obsolete. And here's the thing, this is actually identical to the relationship that a lot of entrepreneurs have with their own business. And we've talked about this before. You can be in a codependent relationship with your business where it has power over you, where your state is determined by that, where you feel powerless rather than sovereign, right? Where what happens in the business determines how you feel. So if the metrics trend in the opposite direction that what you want, you start feeling anxious, you feel stressed. And when things are good, then you feel good. That is a codependent relationship. Just like that applies to relationships in general, this very much applies to how we relate to our business. So same dynamic, different object, right? And the antidote is the same. We have to establish a conscious, defined, sovereign relationship with the thing. And all of that starts with a single question, which is, what is this thing and how do I choose to relate to it? How do I choose to use it? And once you've decided to be conscious about this relationship, the next step is defining what I call your agreement field. So your agreement field is basically the scope of what you're hiring AI to do. So think of it like when I got married to my wife, we exchanged vows and we didn't write codependent vows like is the norm. Our vows were written from a place of sovereignty. So it wasn't this bullshit of like, you complete me and I need you and I'm nothing without you and you're my other half. Very toxic, very codependent. The vows we wrote symbolize the agreement that we were stepping into together, right? We had to define what marriage meant for us. And this is true for, every single thing that we're in a relationship with. It's not just people. So we have to actually make that contract clear. A, we have to choose that contract. B, we have to define that contract. And we have to make sure that that contract is written in a way that actually serves us. So what is the scope of what you're actually hiring AI to do? Now, this is not about what it's capable of, because it's capable of a ton of stuff, right? What are you specifically hiring it for? And this distinction really matters a lot, because what I'm finding is that most entrepreneurs are not clear on this. That scope is really wide. And because that scope is really wide, there's a lot of fucking anxiety, because there's a lot of uncertainty, because this thing can do a lot. So it can build you a platform, it can write your copy, it can design your systems, it can replace your team, it can research your competitors, it can generate your content, it can analyze your data. And every single day, literally, there's something new that could be done that you couldn't do last week. That rate of change is insane. And if your agreement field is undefined, if you haven't decided the specific job that you've hired this thing for, then that scope is going to keep expanding unconsciously, endlessly. And because that open loop of what else is possible is never going to close. And an open loop that never closes is basically a recipe for chronic anxiety, right? It's like having a shit ton of tabs on your computer and never closing them. And every time you open Google Docs to write something, you are confronted with, all these open loops. And that is actually the main reason why people aren't as productive and focused as possible, because they're running a ton of open loops. And this is even more true with AI because this is an unconstrained open loop. It's constantly getting bigger. So I'll give you a real example of what this looks like. So right now I'm building an AI platform. That is my primary AI use case. I'm using 2 very specific tools for that job, right? And so when something new comes out that's directly relevant to that job, like backlog or roadmap organization feature that would allow me to not rebrief the tool every time I start a new conversation, like something that could be really useful. So I'm going to incorporate that because that's in scope, because that serves the specific job that I'm trying to do with it. But when someone sends me a thread about this new AI workflow thing that might be interesting in a completely different context, well, that has to go in a completely different container, right? It doesn't get to interrupt what I'm building right now. It doesn't get to call into question every single thing. Now, the question that I ask is simple, which is, does this serve the specific job that I've hired AI to do? And if yes, then it's in scope. If the answer is no, then it's not that it's wrong. It's just that it's a not now thing, not here. And without that filter, everything's going to sound very urgent. Everything is going to feel very urgent, and everything is going to demand your attention. And the more things pulling at your attention, the more dysregulated and destabilized you're going to feel. The more powerful AI gets, the more infinite the surface area of the things that feel relevant becomes. So think of it this way, right? You have a finite amount of bandwidth. You have a finite amount of attention and energy and capacity, and you have almost an infinite amount of options and ways you can allocate this finite capacity. And what's happening is that with AI, that optionality is increasing exponentially. So for us to scale a business, for us to increase that ratio between inputs and outputs and increase the amount of outputs that the business is able to produce, we have to get better at allocating this finite capacity, this finite bandwidth across an increasingly exponential optionality set. So what that means is that the discipline of constraining options, of defining the scope, becomes increasingly valuable and becomes invaluable, right? This is, by the way, this whole AI thing, it's just the same recreation of like all the other trends and hype cycles we've been through. There was a funnel craze, right? Every entrepreneur was like, should I build a funnel for this? Should I build a funnel for that? There was, a wave with ads. Should I do, paid ads on Meta or YouTube? Or should I do LinkedIn outbound? Or, should I build a webinar funnel? Should I be on TikTok or Instagram, right? The number of things there were smaller than we're seeing with AI, but it's the same disease. It's just a different set of symptoms. So the answer that, probably worked then will still work now, which is pick the one thing, define the job, constrain the scope. Because the solution to AI ADD is a defined agreement field. Okay, so the next thing is the research container. So I'm sure you're also thinking, well, but this space is moving so fast. If I don't stay current, someone's going to come out with something that cannibalizes my model and I'm not going to see it coming. And I need to be prepared. It's my job as a founder to know what's happening. Yes, absolutely yes. It is your job. And that concern is very rational. Actually, if you weren't thinking about how AI is going to affect your business, then I'd be more concerned, not less. But the thing you need to understand is that there's a difference between staying current and being consumed by something, right? Those are 2 very different things. The solution isn't to stay less informed. It's to containerize how you stay current. So this is what I call the research container. So you want to give yourself a defined block of time. Maybe it's 2 hours or 4 hours on the weekend. Maybe it's an hour on Friday afternoons, whatever fits your rhythm, where the mandate is explicitly research mode. So no constraints on exploration. Go down those rabbit holes, watch the tutorials, compare the tools, let yourself be curious, but then close the container, right? Close the loop. When you're working, when you're building the thing, when you're managing your team, you're running the calls, making the offers, serving your clients, let the research container be closed. Protect that space, right? The open loop of what else is possible now has a defined place to live, so it doesn't need to colonize everything else. Without a defined container, that loop is going to run 24/7, and a 24/7 open loop of uncertainty about what's possible is going to completely demolish your ability to concentrate your energy and your attention into the highest leverage things that are actually going to move the needle on your business. So the research container gives the curiosity a home, right? So paradoxically, this is going to make you more focused the rest of the time, not less informed. So you get the benefit of both sides. And there's something deeper happening here as well, right? There's something about what your nervous system actually needs. Because if you collapse all the change that's happening in the world right now into a single wave, AI, technology, economic shifts, there's even war happening. So all of that is a really high frequency, high volatility sine wave. And what most entrepreneurs are trying to do is they're trying to harmonize with this high frequency wave. They're trying to match its speed, keep up with its pace, stay current with its frequency. And that's going to be inherently dysregulating because AI and technology have a fundamentally higher clock speed than your very human nervous system. Your nervous system was not built to move at the speed of software releases. The thing to harmonize with is not the fastest thing in the room. It's actually the slowest, which is some of you are going to love this answer. Others are going to actually fucking hate it. The slowest thing is nature. It's the tree that's outside the window. The thing that moves at a glacial pace. It's the ocean, right? It's the clouds. The rhythmic waves of the ocean that actually match the heartbeat and bring the system back into coherence. The bird songs that are so intelligently designed by the universe that it shifts the brainwave states that you stay in, and that puts you in a state of just beautiful flow and deep regulation. Those are the things we need to be co-regulating with. If you try to co-regulate with AI, you're going to end up extremely dysregulated. And the only way that I'm able to keep pace with this and not go, completely out of my mind is because I'm increasing the commitment that I have to co-regulating with nature and grounding myself so that I actually have the capacity to handle the intense change, right? The research container isn't just a productivity hack. The grounding and the connecting back to nature, it's not just a way to squeeze more capacity, right? We need a more regulated nervous system to handle an increasingly greater amount of chaos, of change, of entropy. So what I'm saying is that when I do that, then I can actually hold that chaos and I can take that chaos and turn it into order, which may look like implementing something, with AI in my business and actually creating productive value versus me going in a million different directions, ending up feeling like I have the spins and then feeling extremely paralyzed and overwhelmed and my nervous system going into freeze because I've exceeded my capacity to digest that amount of change. So the next one is also the most counterintuitive thing because now you have a clear agreement field, right? You've defined what you've hired AI to do. You have a clear research container. So you've put boundaries on where exploration lives. So it doesn't colonize everything. It doesn't, penetrate like your entire fucking life. Now I want to talk to you about the thing that's going to feel a little bit of a mindfuck, right? In a world where AI is democratizing the ability for anyone to build almost anything. I mean, yes, I, helped startups and, venture-backed tech companies grow for a number of years, but I'm completely non-technical. And I'm building a software platform by myself. There's literally no other human being that I'm relying on, that I'm consulting. I'm talking to a lot of people, but I'm literally using AI to build AI. So the thing that I realized was that now the rules have changed. What that means is the alpha now is not what you do with AI, what you build with AI. The alpha is actually what you refuse to do. So I'm going to say that again, right? When anyone can build anything, when the barriers to execution are approaching zero, when a solo operator with the right tools can produce what used to require a team of 20 or 50. Like, I literally ran teams of hundreds of people, hundreds of developers to build things like what I'm building by myself. Execution is no longer the differentiator. Judgment is the real differentiator. So the person who wins, the people who win in their industries, aren't going to be the ones who use AI the most or use AI for the most things. They're going to be the ones who use AI for the right things, right? The people who can look at an opportunity and have the intelligence, the judgment, the wisdom, the discernment, and say, this is noise, not signal. This is not the job that I hired this for, that I need this, that this can wait, because what I actually need to focus on is this thing. The judgment of what not to do is going to become the core differentiator because AI is democratizing everything else. So what's happening with a lot of entrepreneurs right now is that they're working double because of AI, right? Which is really fucking ironic because the whole point of AI was, to allow people to work less. Most entrepreneurs, at least the serious ones, they're working double because of AI, because they're, spending many, many hours a week on top of what they were doing in their business to understand AI and to integrate AI. And most of that work isn't going to lead to anything because they're actually implementing indiscriminately. They're following every shiny thing. They're doing a lot of things that feel productive, that look impressive, but those things are not fundamentally going to move the needle in the actual business, right? They've unconsciously abdicated their core focus because they feel the pressure to keep up. And so they're using AI the way anxious people use anything, indiscriminately, reactively, without a clear job description. And that's why they feel dysregulated, because they are, right? The irony here is that the more powerful AI gets, the more valuable your refusal becomes, not less. So actually, this is actually also the real definition of strategy. Strategy is what we say no to. It's not what we say yes to. So the more constrained you are in what you choose to do with it, the more potent the things that you actually do become. So here's a quick, useful test for any AI rabbit hole that tugs at your attention. So you can ask this: is this directly extremely high in ROI to my core business and tightly related to the strategic direction and vision of my business right now? Not eventually, not in theory, right now. If the answer is no, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying put it in the parking lot. Put it in a bucket that has clearly defined parameters. Maybe it's the research container, maybe it's something else, maybe it surfaces later when the context has changed, but it doesn't get your prime attention right now because it will be a distraction. That question, which is directly related to where I'm going to go next, is a filter that's going to save you months every single year, because to be honest, we're just in the beginning of this wave. Things are just starting. So this is going to get a lot more intense and a lot more overwhelming. So our capacity to deal with this stuff in a more intelligent way has to get better. Okay, so I want to pause here for a second and give you something, because there's a version of everything that I've said that can still feel like, okay, I get all this, but what if I miss something critical? What if the thing that I'm not paying attention to is the thing that makes my business obsolete? So I'm going to address that directly because I've been going deep on this question. A lot of people are, wondering, is my business going to go to zero? Our entire industry is going to go to zero, because what AI is doing is it's deflationary, right? It's removing scarcity in a structural way from society. And I've been reflecting and going really deep on what does scarcity and human value look like in an AI world. I've actually started writing a white paper on it that I'm going to publish soon. But I'm going to give you the punchline and save you the 40 pages. Scarcity isn't going anywhere, right? And the reason why this matters is because AI is inherently deflationary. AI eats inefficiency. AI unlocks frozen value. It reduces arbitrage. It compresses the time, the spread between what something costs to produce and what someone will pay for it. When I say AI is deflationary, what I mean is it's allowing us to generate far greater outputs than it previously took. So think of it like before tractors were invented, if you had a couple of farmers, farming the land, they were able to produce a certain amount of output because they were rate limited by, the energy and effort that's required to produce that crop. As soon as you had farm equipment, tractors and things, what happened is that their ability to produce a far greater output with a fraction of the input increased, right? So it made the cost of production cheaper, and it allowed the amount of production to increase. So that's a deflationary force. So that's happening across the board. That's why, there's tech companies who are doing objectively well on paper that are laying off, 30, 40% of their workforce, and their stock price is increasing because they're able to produce the same amount of value for much less. Actually, they're able to produce exponentially more value for exponentially less. So that's why this whole scarcity thing is important, because what's happening is that we are moving into, in a way, a post-scarcity world. But this is actually important to understand, because AI will not and cannot actually eliminate scarcity. By the way, scarcity is important because the scarcity is what creates transactions. If you think about anything that you buy, you pay for things that are relatively scarce, right? Scarcity is actually what creates value. If something is, extremely abundant, like air, like anyone and everyone has access to air generally. They can breathe and they can get the oxygen that they need, right? Air is not scarce. And so that's why no one is selling air. So scarcity creates value. Value creates your entire fucking business, basically. And that creates the economy on an aggregate level. So scarcity is extremely important to understand. And the reason why scarcity is not going away is because scarcity is a human condition. It's not a technological reality. So what that means is, as long as we live in a human interface reality, as long as there are people who want to feel things, who want to experience things, who want to be in the presence of something real and irreplicable, there is going to be scarcity. And where there is scarcity, there's value. This is really important to understand, because if you find that AI, and this is happening for a lot of people, that AI is making the thing that you used to do, the value you used to create, less scarce, then you have to find a way to increase scarcity, right? And deliver value that has scarcity built into it. Think about, I'm going to give you an example. Think about algorithmic trading. A lot of trading is bots against bots, right? So trading used to be manual. Like people would literally meet at a stock exchange and they would trade. That's why it's called trading. They have these pieces of paper. Now it's all electronic. So when you have machines competing with machines, the arbitrage, the alpha, the opportunity effectively disappears. The spread is in nanoseconds. So there's almost no edge, right? So that's what's going to happen with certain businesses when you fully AIify something that was previously human. So what that means is the businesses that go to zero in an AI world are the ones that could be fully automated with no human required. And because there was no human edge, there's no scarcity, and there's nothing irreplaceable, irreplicable in that. So in your business, right, you need to have some sort of a human edge, something that cannot be scraped, something that cannot be replicated, something that cannot be algorithmically replaced, something that lives in your specific perspective, your specific energy, your specific lived experience, your specific way of seeing things, saying things. That is the only moat. And the more you invest in making that edge more pronounced, more distinct, more genuinely yours, the less AI is going to threaten you, right? Because AI cannot replicate what is genuinely scarce. So when I was talking to one of my clients and close friends, Eli, he said something interesting, which is, yeah, Rick Rubin, we were talking about this, that Rick Rubin has probably never once thought about who's going to take his market share, right? Because there's no market share to take because there's just Rick Rubin. That's the end state. The way I want you to approach this is that is actually true sovereignty, right? I don't believe in competition because when I operate in true sovereignty, there can be no competition because what I'm selling is unreplicable. And this is why I talk a lot about building what I call a singularity brand, where the thing that you do, your business does, is a singularity. That it is not a multiplicity. It's not a thing that, someone can go get from, 5, 10 other people, because those businesses are going to struggle a lot. Because if your business, if your core value, if your brand, if your positioning can be replicated and you are not a category of one, then you're going to have a rough time, because AI is going to increase the ability that the average person has to replicate what you've got. So this kind of sovereignty, that is an internal choice before it's an external reality. So what that means is you have to choose it and you have to architect for it. And okay, now I want to address something that I think is also driving a lot of the anxiety that's underneath all of this, which is the assumption that being first is the thing to do, right? You have to be first. You have to be the first to know. You have to be the first to implement. You have to be the first to launch. That if you're not ahead of the curve, if you're not implementing before everyone else, that someone else is going to get there first and you will be left behind. And I get it. I've felt it myself. Like, this is such a pervasive belief in the entrepreneurial culture that no one actually questions it. So I'm going to question it. Because there's something that I've been calling, which is a term that I'm enjoying more and more these days, which is the first mover disadvantage, right? You've heard of the first mover advantage, and it's pretty self-explanatory, which is that there's an advantage to being first to move, first to market and all that. And that's true, but I think what's happening right now is for a lot of the people who orient that way, who are trying to be the first movers in every way, it's actually costing them in some ways. So first of all, you have to realize that the AI war between all of these massive, venture-backed companies, you have to understand that like your fucking $20, $200 cloud subscription is costing them thousands of dollars to service. So venture funding is subsidizing your use of AI. So they're literally paying you to use AI, right? Which is crazy. So you should all, if that wasn't clear, AI is amazing, use it intelligently. But the reference point for that rate of change is a scale that you cannot imagine. And chances are you don't run a $500 billion company with an army of, engineers and basically the best talent on the planet. When you have a finite amount of resources, maybe you run, a 6, 7, 8, or 9-figure business, being the first all the time, right? Doing that R&D in public, figuring out, all this stuff, your positioning, your messaging, live in front of your market, that process becomes extremely expensive in terms of time, money, and attention. And what happens is when you're attached to moving first, when you're attached to being first, your rate of change is extremely high. And as your rate of change increases, the second, third, and fourth movers are watching, they're taking notes, and they're seeing what's working. And those people typically wait for things to stabilize a little bit. And when they launch, they skip the painful beginning part, right? They skip all that stuff and they just leapfrog to where you are now. Now, unless you have the capacity to spend and allocate a lot of excess energy to that trial and error, it may actually make more sense for you to wait, slow yourself down, and actually wait for things to settle a little bit, right? An example of this is when OpenClaw came out, I was watching, but it felt like something that was too undefined, right? Within weeks, Perplexity launched Perplexity Computer. Manus launched Manus Computer, which is basically, it does, similar things. And then Claude launched Claude Computer last night. And so I think for some people, they have to be first because that's what their business hinges on. They may literally be in the AI space and their business might be, capitalizing on the alpha before everyone else starts talking about the same thing. But if your business is not in the AI space, core, if your business is one that can benefit from AI being integrated, then you might be a candidate for this idea that being first actually puts you at a disadvantage. And this is not a hypothetical thing. I've actually seen this happen repeatedly over the years. Back in the tech days, right? People would build the pioneering version of a thing and they would do all the hard work, and this is expensive work of figuring out how to build it, how to architect it, how to position it, how to sell it, how to market it, how to deliver it, and then watch people who enter the space without any of the scars and a cleaner version of the model. The pressure of being a first mover is that you have to keep moving. You have to keep innovating and you cannot stop. And that's exhausting. It's also very unsustainable. But you have to keep moving because the second mover advantage is always right behind you, right? So you have to keep running, stay on that treadmill, right? And so the scars and a much cleaner version of the model, right? The pressure of being a first mover is that you have to keep moving. You can never stop innovating because the second mover advantage is always right behind you. So you're constantly running. And the thing is that the only people in a market who don't feel that pressure, who aren't constantly looking over their shoulder, they're not the ones who are the fastest. They're not the ones who are using AI the most. They're actually the ones who are architecturally the most unreplicable. So the more unreplicable something is, the less intensely and the less fast you have to move to stay ahead of everyone ahead of you, right? Who's replicating you. So if you have a generic accounting firm, right, you have no moat and you're gonna basically get commoditized with AI extremely fast. But let's say you run a boutique investment advisory firm that works with high net worth families and helps them basically build and run a family office. And this is boutique strategy that's multi-generational. You help them really protect their assets and grow their assets. And you use, a lot of interesting sort of international ways that you help them mitigate taxes and all that stuff. Now, this business is probably going to have a much deeper moat, right? So the more replicable your business is, the faster you have to move literally ahead of everyone else, because there's always going to be people who are replicating you. And with AI, the rate of replication is going to skyrocket. So the goal is to become as unreplicable as possible, right? Because the more unreplicable you are, the more you can play your game at your speed. And this is actually what sovereignty looks like and feels like. I want to play my game at my speed. I don't want to change my pace based on other people, based on AI, based on so-called competition, right? And this is why the pressure to be first, to implement everything, to stay ahead of the AI wave is often a symptom of not having already built something genuinely irreplicable. So commodity businesses and the business owners who run commodity businesses are the ones who are stressing and fearing AI the most, right? So if you did build a business that is a lot closer to a singularity, then you're not going to need to outrun anyone else. So the antidote to first mover anxiety isn't moving faster. It's building something that can't be copied regardless of who comes after you. That's really important to understand, right? If you reallocate your focus to building a moat, building, making your business a category of one business, making your brand a singularity, making the kind of value that you offer something that's extremely challenging to replicate, then that anxiety starts to dissipate. And actually you can use AI in a more productive way to accelerate what you're building, to deliver value at a greater scale with a lot more leverage, to create more efficiency in your business, to improve customer experience. And you can do that in a state of joy. You can do that in a state of ease. You can do that in a productive way, right? You don't need to have a manic relationship that is a byproduct. It's a symptom of that fear. Okay, so now I want to give you the actual compass, the thing that ties everything together, that gives you a framework for making these decisions, not just about AI, but really about any opportunity that demands your attention. So the issue that most high-performing entrepreneurs have is that they oscillate between two modes unconsciously. So the first one, think one end of the spectrum, is being opportunistic. So this is the mode where you see something new and you go after it. You're responsive, you're agile, you're fast, you're quick to pivot, you're scanning for arbitrage and you're jumping on it. And this is genuinely a valuable skill to have because it's actually what lets you take advantage of things before the market has priced them in. It's probably why you're ahead of most people. The second mode on the other end of the spectrum is the plan, right? This is the mode where you stay fidelis to the direction you're already committed to. So this is the vision that you came up at the beginning of the year. Maybe there's a book that you committed to writing, an offer you were committed to launching, maybe growing your audience. Whatever the thing is, if you actually executed it fully, it would actually change a lot of things for you. Both modes are legitimate. The problem isn't switching between them. The problem is switching in between them without realizing that you're doing it. Because when that switching is unconscious, when an AI tool pulls you into opportunism without you deciding that that's actually what you're doing, you end up 3 weeks later wondering why the plan hasn't moved, why you drifted from the thing that you were actually planning on making progress on. You've probably seen that Jean-Claude Van Damme ad with the Volvo trucks where he's doing a split across the two and they start to slowly diverge. He's going deeper and deeper into that split. The ad cuts off at a certain point, but you can imagine that's what's going to happen to you if you are torn between these two places. If that oscillation between being opportunistic and tracking to the plan remains unconscious, you're going to have one foot in each side, right? With those things diverging because that's what AI is doing. And the move isn't to stop being opportunistic. Being opportunistic is one of your greatest assets. It's actually one of the greatest skills that's going to, allow some people to make a decade of progress over the next 12 months. The move is actually to make that switching conscious, to compartmentalize that move so that you have containers in the course of your day and week that allow for you to be opportunistic and be opportunistic fully and allow you to actually be fidelis and track to your plan because that's what actually allows you to move forward in the business in terms of the things that matter. So ask yourself, perhaps a lot more frequently, am I being opportunistic right now? Does this new thing, this rabbit hole, this AI capability, does it directly serve the vision that I've committed to? Does it align with where I'm going, right? Because if we're not increasing our calibration, increasing the connection that we have, the frequency of reconnecting to the vision on a daily basis, right? We're going to drift from that vision. We're going to be taken off course by opportunity. Some of that opportunity is going to be legitimate, but some of it is going to end up in hindsight looking like a shiny object. So here's a framework that I've found really clarifying, which is you want there to be a full coherence between your head, your heart, and let's say your crotch, right? It needs to make logical sense. It needs to be tightly aligned to your vision, which I believe lives in your heart, and it needs to produce turn on, which happens in your crotch. And you'll find that when you're imbalanced, when you're going off in a direction that actually is misaligned for where you need to be, you'll find that one of those three dominate the equation. It's not a clear synergistic combination of all three, right? Because if the new AI tool is intellectually interesting, but it's not genuinely exciting, or it's not deeply connected to the bigger vision, it's not something that your gut is also saying yes to, then you're actually operating at a third of your capacity. It might be head only, which may be fine for analysis, but it may not be enough to justify pulling your attention from the thing that has all three. And a lot of the AI anxiety that I'm seeing right now, it's because they're in a head only response state. The sense of, oh, this seems important, therefore I should be doing something with it. It's not a good enough reason. It may be for some people, but it may not be for you. And the ideal sort of criteria is that this directly serves my vision, I'm genuinely turned on by it, and it makes strategic sense given the vision that I've laid out. That's the compass. So every AI decision that comes across your desk, comes across your mind, apply it, but make sure that you have the head, you have the heart, and you have the turn on. So all three, otherwise put it in the parking lot. So now I want to give you, I think, what's the real unlock underneath all this, which is that the entrepreneurs who are most dysregulated by AI right now aren't necessarily the ones who are most exposed to it. They're the ones who've unconsciously adopted the identity of the AI implementer when that's actually not the game that they're supposed to be playing. So let me be specific. There are people whose business is AI, right? These are the people you probably see on YouTube making 4 videos a day. They have to be at the bleeding edge. They're building products, creating communities. There's even companies in the space. They're creating infrastructure, building systems. Their core business is the technology itself. They should be up until 2 a.m. every night fire hosing information because that's the job that they've chosen. And there are people, this is probably you, some of you at least, whose business happens to be adjacent to AI, whose business can benefit from AI, where AI is a great tool. It can serve the work that you do, but the work itself, the value that you create, the thing that people pay for, it's not the technology, it's your perspective, it's your energy, it's your specific expertise, the service you offer, it's the relationship with your clients. And so here's the thing, right? These two people should be relating to AI in a completely different way. The person whose business is AI, they have to keep up because that's the nature of being in that game. The person who has a business that AI serves, they need a different defined relationship, a containerized research practice, and a clear job description for the technology. The idea is not to become the chief AI implementation officer of your business. In that case, you are the visionary, you're the strategist, you're the person whose attention is the core asset of the entire business, right? The biggest constraint on any business is the founder's attention because Your attention is required to make decisions. Those decisions generate value. The quality of your decisions directly impact how much value you generate and how efficiently you generate that value, which is basically your entire fucking business. So the better your decision making, the better the outcomes you'll produce in your business. Your decision making is rate limited by how much attention you have, right? So every hour that your attention gets completely demolished by AI and leaves you in a state of overwhelm, that's an hour that your core asset, your attention, your creativity, your vision, your expression is not only being underdeployed, but it's basically being stolen from the core value creation that you should be doing. So I'm going to say this more directly, right? Which is the most valuable thing you can do in this whole AI thing is potentially not learning to use more tools. It's actually to protect and amplify the thing that cannot be tooled, which is your frequency, your irreplicability, your specific way of seeing and saying things, your ability to make better decisions. Sometimes, for some of you, it's actually more intelligent to hire someone who basically makes it their job to fire hose themselves 24/7 with all the AI stuff and filters and constrains what you should pay attention to. Because that's the asymmetric opportunity, right? It's not the technology. It's the application of the technology. The energy, your energy is the asymmetric opportunity. And if we can use technology more intelligently and as a tool, not as the thing, right? That opens up a level of leverage that someone with just the technology or just the energy cannot sustain. You want to have the best of both worlds, right? So the union of the two, that's where things get interesting. So I want you to see something. I want you to imagine the version of you that has a truly sovereign relationship with AI. Not the version that's overwhelmed, not the version that's consumed, 3 hours of YouTube videos every morning trying to stay on top of things. Not the version whose best creative energy is going to, research and implement and, get really anxious about all the things. This is the version of you that has a clear agreement field, right? Knows exactly what job you've hired AI to do, who evaluates every new tool against that job description and your core vision, and keeps tightly aligned, tightly fidelis with the vision that you've laid out. That version has a clear research container, a defined place for that curiosity to live, where you can explore to your heart's content, right? But protects their attention and focus from the things that haven't earned that right. And this version of you also knows how to say no. This version of you knows what to refuse, right? You can see the fire hose of AI content and capabilities as something to selectively engage with, not from a position of clarity, not something to try and drink entirely, but in a very discerning, judicious way, right? This is the version of you that has a compass, your head, your heart, your turn on, and you apply it to every single AI decision, and you move forward with full alignment, or you put those things in a parking lot. This is the version of you that's built something genuinely irreplicable that doesn't need to be first, because what you're building cannot actually be copied no matter who comes next. This version of you isn't working double the hours. You're working potentially even less than you currently are, because you're being a lot more focused. And the output, which are actually producing the content, the offers, the client work, the value, the expression, this is actually magnified by the technology rather than being diluted by the anxiety around it. So this is not a fantasy, right? This is an identity that you can take on. This is a philosophical frame that you can hold. And that's why I wanted to make this video, so you have a way to relate to AI. You have a way to build a personal set of decision filters, to develop a set of values, right? So you can have a conscious, intentional agreement field with AI. And this is separation season. So that's what's going to allow you to separate from all the other people who will fire hose themselves indiscriminately, right? Who will continue to feel like AI is something they have to constantly keep up with, constantly manage and respond to and implement. And, that is that codependency pattern. Because when people are in a codependent relationship with something, that thing is going to determine their state. That thing is going to drive how they feel, what they do, right? Every single thing, every announcement, every product release is going to feel urgent. Every new development is going to feel like a potential threat. And that is a recipe to be extremely reactive and lose energy in the business instead of feeling sovereign, where you actually feel rock solid and you actually become anti-fragile, where the higher the rate of change, the more grounded, focused, and calm you become, and the better your decision-making becomes. So the antidote, right, just like in all the other domains in business and with AI, is the same. You want to define the relationship. You want to define the terms of the relationship. You want to decide who you are in relation with this thing, not what the thing demands of you, but what you choose. And that shift from being reactive to sovereign, that's more than just a productivity strategy. It's an identity shift, right? And that's the identity shift that is available to you right now. And, to wrap this up, it's possible that you don't need more AI. It's possible that what you need is a sovereign relationship with it. And I highly recommend you reflect on what this means for you, right? How you implement this for yourself in your day, in your week, in your life, where the alpha isn't, how much AI you use. It's knowing what you use it for and knowing how it fits into your life and your business. Because the people who actually make the shift sooner, eventually everyone's going to have to harmonize with it in some way and have some sort of value set. But right now there's an edge because most people are running around like headless chickens, and I don't want you to be one of them. So I hope this was useful. Drop a comment if something resonated. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.